So without that selfishness, we wouldn't have survived to recognize that not every aspect of being selfish is positive. There are aspects of this selfishness within our character that needs to be dealt with, that needs to be censored or changed. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses that when He describes the human being. In Surah Al-Isra, the verse that I shared with you, where Allah says, if you had, this is what He says subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, if you as, O human being, if you had within your hands khaza'in al-rahmah, if you had the khaza'in, the storages of the rahmah, of Allah's compassion, if you had them, imagine what these are. Imagine the magnitude of the khaza'in of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's compassion and love. If you had within your hands the keys to them, إِذَا لَأَمْسَكْتُمْ, you would have held a lot of it back. خَشْيَةَ الْإِنفَاقِ, out of fear of running out of fear of not having enough for yourself. وَكَانَ الْإِنسَانُ قَتُورًا. And the human being has always been qatur, has always been extremely selfish. Extremely selfish. He talks about the concept of bukhl, subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the Quran, time and time again. And when he talks about it, he said, الَّذِينَ يَبْخَلُونَ وَيَأْمُرُونَ النَّاسَ بِالْبُخْلِ. Those who are selfish and they command others to be selfish. Talked about in a negative time, in a negative context every single time. وَالَّذِينَ تَبَوَّأُوا الدَّارَ وَالْإِيمَانَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ يُحِبُّونَ مَنْ هَاجَرَ إِلَيْهِمْ وَلَا يَجِدُونَ فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حاجة مما أوتوا ويؤثرون على أنفسهم ولا يجدون في صدورهم حاجة مما أوتوا ويؤثرون على أنفسهم ولو كان بهم خصاصة ومن يوق شح نفسه. Twice in the Quran this phrase. ومن يوق شح نفسه فأولئك هم المفلحون. And the person who is protected from the selfishness that exists within himself is the one who will be most successful in this life and the hereafter. Alayhi salatu wasalam, in the hadith of Muslim, will tell us, إِيَّاكُمْ وَالشُّحْ, or another narration, اتَّقُوا الشُّحْ. Be very careful of this selfishness. فَإِنَّمَا أَهْلَكَ مَنْ كَانَ قَبْلَكُمْ. This is what destroyed all the nations that came before you. حَمَلَهُمْ أَنْ سَفَكُوا دِمَاءَهُمْ وَاسْتَحَلُّوا أَعْرَاضَهُمْ. It turned them into people who stole from one another, who murdered one another, who transgressed against the dignity of one another. It was the shuh that existed inside of them that they left uncensored and uncontrolled. And as a segue from this piece, which is worth maybe talking about, the concept of shuh is huge. I absolutely cannot fit it in a half a khutbah or one khutbah or many khutbahs really. And it's the focus of what tazkiyah is about really, is learning how to get rid of that selfishness. Understanding, by the way, that what Islam is about is feeding your ultimate level of selfishness. Islam is not to tell you not to be selfish. Like none of these characteristics that I pointed out to you are fully negative. There are negativity to them, which is what I pointed out in these khutbahs. Otherwise, they're intrinsic to who you are. They're important. Without that selfishness, you die. You starve. You can't take care of yourself. So you need a certain degree of it. But if you don't know how to regulate it, it will turn you into something that you don't want to be. It'll turn you into something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not pleased with. And that goes for every characteristic that we talked about so far. But when it comes to selfishness, we are actually commanded to be extremely selfish. Just not the way our nafs wants to be selfish. Making it to Jannat al-Na'im, brothers and sisters, is the ultimate form of selfishness. You are not allowed to be selfless when it comes to Jannah, when it comes to Akhirah. When it comes to Akhirah, you're not supposed to be selfless. You're supposed to be very selfish when it comes to Akhirah. It's just the only way for you to achieve that ultimate expression of selfishness, Yawm al-Qiyamah, where you go to Jannah first and you arrive at the highest rank, is by being selfless in this life. That's how He set it up, subhanahu wa ta'ala. He set it up that way. He set it up that if you want to be able to be very selfish Yawm al-Qiyamah, you have to be fully selfless in this life. There's no other way to do it. And this selflessness in this life is what feeds your ability to be selfish later on. That's why when Jabir and his father were discussing who's going to go for Uhud, and Jabir is telling him, obviously I'm going to go. I'm 21, you're 78, you have 9 daughters, you're elderly and you're tired. I'm 21, I'm going to go with my friends, with the Sahaba, of course. And his father like, no, it's not fair. One of us goes, and why did we decide that it's you? And Jabir is like, what do you mean? What do you decide it's just me? You're going to be a grandfather soon. I'm 21, Are you seriously considering not letting me go to this ma'rakah? Like it's odd. I'm 21 years old. Everyone's going to be there. Why would you go? People, you don't have to go. The Prophet told you don't have to leave. You are ma'dur. He said, nope, I want to go too. So we flip a coin. Flip a coin? What do you mean flip a coin? So he flipped a coin. Well, yeah, in so many words, they pulled straws. And it turned out his father was going to go. He got the... So Jabir is sitting there sobbing for a number of reasons. The fact that he's not going to be there with the Prophet ﷺ during Uhud. And of course that his father, the elderly man, is going to go to war and probably not come back. So he's sobbing, and Abdullah would pat him on the back and say, Ya bunay, wallahi law kanat ghayra al-akhirah la athartuka biha. I swear to you, if it was anything else aside from Jannah, I would have given it to you first. Of course, anything I have is yours, but this is akhirah. I have to choose myself. Is that selfishness in akhirah? But not in dunya. In dunya, you have to be selfless. This is the whole point of it. We are very selfish when it comes to our suffering. Let me make a few statements here. We're very selfish when it comes to suffering. I noticed this in my life young, because when I lived in Syria, and I grew up listening to what happened in Bosnia in the late 90s. I grew up and I saw what happened in Iraq. It was right beside me in 2003. Like these are my teen years. Like kind of watching all that happen. I watched Gaza be bombed. I can't even count. I don't even know anymore. I can't even count how many times. Like throughout my life, forget about this last 2 years. So just throughout my life, how many times it was destroyed and people were murdered. And I grew up. I have to be honest. In certain situations we reacted, but it wasn't really the reaction that needed to happen. Like it wasn't the appropriate reaction from us as a people. And it was normalized to be a little bit, to care, but only to care to a certain degree, nothing beyond that, right? Like a mediocre way of caring, a medium level of caring, just medium, just nothing crazy, a little bit. And it surprised me as a kid, because when you're a kid, you're still idealistic. So I used to wonder, this doesn't make sense. Why aren't we all caring more about this? Why aren't we all voicing out and causing, why aren't we moving the world to stop all of this? But no one seemed to care. Everyone just kept on going with their lives and weddings and gatherings, and just everything was normal. Even though, like, we were watching planes above our heads going to bomb Iraq, and I watched it. I watched this. We did something in 2003 where we would pick up the phone and we would just call a random Iraqi number in Baghdad, just random, and just tell them that we feel for you and stuff like this. I did this for years when I was a kid, right? But no one really cared. And then what happens to you later on is you watch people who are indifferent and just don't care, is that it rubs off on you. And you become a little bit indifferent yourself. And I started becoming indifferent to all the suffering of other people. And by the time I was 21, 22, I couldn't care less. I was totally focused on my university studies and my sharia and the tib and whatever other stuff I was doing in life. And of course I watched and made dua for them in Ramadan and Taraweeh and Witr and all this stuff. But you just kind of became numb. You just numbed ourselves. And then that big, mean, horrible tire of death and destruction found its way to my country, and it rolled over me. It rolled over my people. It rolled over my city and my country, and it brought the same degree of destruction and death and horror and suffering and pain and agony that I brought to everyone else. And in the midst of it, as I watched people being gassed and murdered and killed and thrown away forever and lost, and I was wondering, why doesn't anyone else care? Then I wrote a little verse of poetry. My poetry is garbage, but I wrote this one verse that I stick with me. لا بأس إن لم تسمعوا لمقالتي ما كنت أسمعكم وبيتي عامر. It's okay that you're not listening to me today, because I didn't listen to you when my house was well put together. When everything was working for me, I didn't hear you either. So I can't blame you today for not caring about me. This is selfishness, by the way. The reason I'm talking, this is rooted in selfishness. There's no other reason. Is that we're too selfish. We care about ourselves and only ourselves. And over the last 2 years, we've cared heavily about the people of Gaza and Palestine. There's a religious piece to that. We care about that because that's Quds is there in Al-Aqsa, and there's a history behind it. But until the suffering of every Muslim in the world becomes equal to that, we won't make any changes. I add to that. Until the suffering of every human being or every living thing unjustly becomes important to us, then change won't actually occur. The number of suffering, the amount of suffering that's happening in the world today across the globe, to human beings and to Muslims specifically. You have to start with Muslims, because if you can't take care of those who are close to you, you can't take care of those who are far away from you. Like, you have to start close and then move on. Right? That's how life works. You have to take care of your family first, then your neighbors, then that's how it goes. So yes, we've cared heavily about Al-Quds and Al-Aqsa and the people of Gaza, and we have to continue to do so. And I pointed this out to you. that within 3 or 4 weeks of ceasefire, people stop caring about it. It's not talked about anymore. It's not brought up. It'll only be brought up until the atrocity begins again. That shouldn't be the case. But what about the people living elsewhere? Throughout the last 10 years, we not only watched people in Syria get harmed, or in Iraq, but we watched them in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in India, in Myanmar, in China, in Somalia, in Eritrea, in Ethiopia, today in Sudan, before that in Libya, all across the world, people are suffering, and we don't care. This is the bottom line. We don't care. We don't talk about it. We don't discuss it. We don't look for ways to help it. We don't advocate for it. And because of that, this big wheel of destruction, this big wheel of death and destruction is going to find its way to us. This is the lesson that has to be learned from selfishness. If you care only about yourself, it doesn't work. Forget about the ethical piece. I'm going to speak practically to you. If you care only about yourself, just to kind of give you the piece of information that matters, it doesn't work. Like, you don't actually save yourself by doing it. You are going to lose like everyone else. Maybe a little bit later, but the same thing will happen. If I decide that only me matters, and as long as me, myself, and my wife and my children and the people I love are fine, then I don't care. It will find its way to me. It's guaranteed. It's life. It's going to happen. So when you're being selfless, when you care about others, let me just pop the bubble for you. Don't get on an ethical high ground here. No, you're doing this to save yourself too. It's a selfish act. When I care for other Muslims and other human beings on the planet that I live on, it's a selfish act. Because if I don't, I am going to be harmed like them. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time that it makes its way to me. I swear to you, wallahi, my younger brothers and sisters, my hand to God, I swear to you that this is life. If you decide that you're the only one who matters, and you live that way, I swear to you that which happened to others and you didn't care about will happen to you times 10. And no one will listen. Because you allowed yourself to be selfish, and selfishness here is not the answer. The nafs, selfishness, is taboo, it's wrong. Because the nafs is short-sighted, and it's ignorant, it doesn't know. I'm telling you, be selfish, but be selfish in the right way. Be selfish in the right way. Caring for others means that someone will care for you one day, because what goes around comes around. Caring for the suffering of others means that you will protect yourself. When you protect your brother, you protect yourself. When you let your enemy harm your brother, and you say, well, it's not actually, he was competing with me, so now I'm stronger. Then, no, you're not. You're weaker. You're weaker. Oh, ignorant soul. You're weaker. You just haven't seen it yet. And if we haven't learned that from study a little bit of history. Wallahi, a little bit of history. Something simple. Read anything. Any part of Islamic history or non-Islamic history. Those who are too selfish, too self-centered, too egocentric, to do to give up their egos and to give up their selfishness and do what needed to be done at the time, lost everything. They lost everything. The leaders of Andalus towards the end, that's what they were. They would enjoy watching their enemies take down their rivals, the small Muslim kingdoms. It didn't help them. When their neighbor fell, it was just a few years later they fell too. And then they lost everything forever. Forever. It was lost forever. The names are still there. You can go to Valencia and to Qartaja and Gharnata, and you can go see the Islamic history there. You can see the amount of knowledge that was produced there, the amount of science that was studied there, the hadara, the civilization that was built there. It's all gone forever. Why? Because people are selfish. Because of selfishness. Today, we are watching, brothers and sisters in Sudan die of starvation. A humanitarian crisis on levels that, forgive me, exceed what we've seen in Gaza. But because it doesn't get the same amount of media coverage, right? It doesn't get the same amount of media coverage, so we don't watch as much, so we don't care as much. So more of them die in silence. In silence, as if we're bothered by, don't make noise, please, as you leave this world. We have enough to, no. That's not how this works. We can't allow that to be the case. Just like you advocate for the people in Gaza, just like you advocate for Palestine as a cause, an ethical cause, a religious cause, you advocate for the people, the Muslims everywhere in the world. Everywhere. You advocate for their rights, for the right to live freely and in dignity, and their right to education and to ownership and to food and to drink and to live without oppression. You advocate for it in whatever way you can. And we're all, I start with myself on this, and the manabir in the world, we're all very guilty of not doing that right, and not doing that correctly, not doing it the way it needs to be done. And that's why I think this is an important topic. Insan qatur, bakhil, shahih, cares only about himself. Unless he decides that he's going to be different. Unless he changes that. And when he does, it's magical. Wallahi, it's magic when he does. The human being, when the human decides to be selfless, to get rid of that self-centeredness and that egocentric approach to this world, it's magical. It's something, jaws drop when that happens. When you see it, you are moved by it. You're moved by true selflessness, where the person doesn't care about recognition, doesn't care about reward in this life, doesn't care whether they are acknowledged. They're just doing it because it's the right thing to do, because others require it or need it. It's beautiful. The Prophet ﷺ, the known hadith in Imam Ahmad, when he came one night and it was like this, a cold night, it was raining, people were tired, and Medina didn't have a lot in it, and people were hungry. Didn't have a lot. And a Muslim, muhajir, came from some tribe persecuted for years. He's coming into Medina, he's tired, he's filthy, he's hungry, he's not in good shape, and he has no place to put him. The masjid is full. There's no corner for him to put this man. He doesn't have a space in his home, alayhi salam, to put him. His houses were full. So he stands there and he says, Man yudayyif hada rajul? Who will take care of this man tonight? Will someone? So a poor guy, and no one did. They're all poor. If one guy put his, I'll do it, Ya Rasulullah. So he takes him home. And he tells his wife, I have a guest the Prophet ﷺ sent my way. Well, I don't. What do you have? Just a small bowl of food that I was going to feed your children because they're hungry. So he said, well, distract them a bit and put them to sleep. Like the kids, if you distract them a bit, they'll sleep. They'll forget about it. But she said, but even the food that's left is not enough for you and him to eat. He said, well, just act like we don't have a light, and that way he can't see it. And then we'll just take our utensils and clunk and clank on the acting like we're eating, and he can just eat it. And that's what they did. She put the kids to sleep. She bought the food, turned off the lights. They sat, all three of them, to eat, and they're just taking their spoons and just clunking, acting like they're eating. The guy doesn't know he's eating. He's starving. And they go to sleep, they wake up the next morning. That's what they did, quietly. And goes to Salat al-Fajr with the man, normally. Prophet ﷺ stands up, and he points out the gentleman, because this was too important for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not to expose it. Like, it had to be exposed. The Prophet ﷺ had to expose this. You can't leave that degree of selflessness people have to learn from this. So he stood up, إِنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ عَجِمَ مِنْ صَنِيعِكُمَ اللَّيْلَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in awe, Jalla Jalaluhu. Obviously, we do not, there's no anthropomorphism, and we don't draw similarities between us and Allah. But you understand here. That's the word he used, ajiba. He's in awe of your behaviors last night. And then he told the Sahaba, this is what these people did. They put their kids to sleep hungry. They went to sleep hungry. And they made this whole charade so the man could eat without guilt. Without guilt, because the man wouldn't eat. If you brought a man to your house, he's like, oh, this is the only food I have, and I have 3 children, and they're all hungry. He's not going to eat. Of course he's not going to eat. That's ridiculous. He's going to say, Tayyib, forgive me, I'll sleep. But they did this so that the man could eat without guilt, because he is the daif. And the ayat, وَالَّذِينَ تَبَوَّأُوا الدَّارَ وَالْإِيمَانَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ. The Ansar, the people who were living in that place in Medina before the Muhajirin. يُحِبُّونَ مَنْ هَاجَرَ إِلَيْهِمْ. They love the fact that these people are immigrating to them. They love that the people of Quraysh are coming. They love that. How would you love that? You want more immigrants. You want more people to take up the housing. There's no housing in Medina. You think this is expensive? Go see Medina when the Prophet ﷺ opened it. There was no housing. People were living in the same house. There was no place to live. يُحِبُّونَ. They love مَنْ هَاجَرَ إِلَيْهِمْ. Those who immigrate to them. وَلَا يَجِدُونَ فِي صُدُورِهِمْ حَاجَةً مِمَّا أُوتُوا. And they're not bothered by the fact that some of them are wealthier than them. And some of them have spent more time with the Prophet ﷺ than them. And that some of them have more knowledge of Islam than they do. They weren't bothered by that at all. وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ. And they selflessly put their needs above their own. وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةٌ. Even if they are extremely poor. Khasasa is poverty. Even though if they're living a life of poverty, they'll put them ahead of themselves. How is that possible? وَمَنْ يُوقَ شُحَّ نَفْسِهِ. The person who's protected from the selfishness of their own soul. فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. Those are the ones who will be successful. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه يغفر لكم يا فوز المستغفرين. استغفر الله. الحمد لله وحده وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اتبع نهجه ووفى عهده. إخواني وأخواتي، الحديث اليوم عن طبعين أصيلين في ابن آدم يتحدث القرآن عنهما، ويعلمنا الله سبحانه وتعالى كيف نتخلص منهما. وهذان الطبعان الشح والضعف، ولعلني لا أستطيع أن أتحدث عن الضعف اليوم لضيق الوقت، لكن الشح يا أخواني أصل كل سوء. ويشير الله إلى الشح في القرآن فيعبر عنه بالقتور وبالبخل يعني وبالمنع وبالإمساك إلى ما هنالك من آيات تعبر عن نفس المعنى. الإنسان الذي لا يرى شيئا في الكون له أهمية أو قيمة إلا خدمة ذاته. أنت ما أصلا يعني أنت غير قادر على قضاء الوقت مع إنسان هكذا، ولعلك تسميه المصلحجي في حياتك، لعلك تشير إليه هكذا، وهذا صديق ليس بصديق، وإنسان تحاول الابتعاد عنه قدر الإمكان، وإذا جاء طارقا بابك يعني صعرت خدك يعني، وتسأل الله ألا يحيجك إليه، ولا تحب صحبته، لأن الإنسان الأناني، الإنسان الشحيح، هذا الإنسان صعب المراس، صعب الصحبة، قليل الخير. هو طبع ابن آدم أن يكون شحيحا، لكن الشح هذا يجب أن يتجاوزه الإنسان، وتجاوزه هو بالتأكيد عليه، تجاوزه هو بالتأكيد عليه. أنت يجب أن تكون أشح ما يمكن فيما يتعلق بأمور الآخرة، لكن ليس في الدنيا. الشح في الدنيا هذا قصر نظر، هذا قصر النظر وجهل وقلة فهم وعلم. أن تكون شحيحا هنا، وما الذي يوجد هنا حتى تكون شحيحا عليه؟ تبخل بماذا؟ بما لا يرى الله سبحانه وتعالى له قيمة، بما يرى الله هو أقل من جناح البعوض، فتكون شحيحا على الدنيا للدنيا. كيف؟ أي جهل هذا؟ بل كن شحيحا على الآخرة، بل كن بخيلا بالآخرة، والبخل في الآخرة والشح في الآخرة يقتضي أن يكون الإنسان مؤثرا في الدنيا، يقتضي أن يكون الإنسان مؤثرا ذا إيثار في الدنيا، فيقدم مصلحة الغير، ويقدم مصلحة الأمة، ويقدم مصلحة الذين يعولهم والذين لا يعرفهم ممن ابتلوا في هذه الحياة على نفسه. وإذا لم نتعلم هذا المعنى وبقينا على الشح الذي فينا، فأبشركم أن عجلة الخراب والدمار والأسى والمرض والتعب والغضب والحزن والخسائر كما داست من حولك ستأتيك قريبا. بشراك تأتينا قريبا تدوسنا كما داست من حولنا. الشحيح الذي لا يرى أنه يخدم إلا نفسه، فينظر إلى معاناة غيره ولا يراها معاناة أصلا، ولا يهتم لها ولا يتحرك لها. اعلم أن الدولاب الذي داسه، اعلم أن الخراب الذي حصله سيأتيك قريبا. وقتلت يوم قتل الثور الأبيض. وهذه والحكم في هذا المعنى تتجاوز الإسلام يا أخواني، قديمة قد قدم الدهر نفسه. وكما يعني عانى إخواننا في فلسطين وغزة، يعاني إخواننا في السودان وفي اليمن وفي غيرها من بلاد الأرض، كل بلاد الأرض. والشح يقتضي أن ننظر في معاناتهم، وأن نهتم بها، وأن نقدمها يعني، وأن نعمل من أجلها كما لو كانت معاناتنا الشخصية، لأنها معاناة لنا شخصية. هي معاناتنا، لكن الإنسان يجهل أحيانا، يظن وهي مش مشكلتي، إيش علاقتي في هذه البلد وتلك البلاد؟ لا، أنت مسلم، علاقتك بكل البلدان، وإذا أهملتها وقعت في ذلك الذي أهملته. I'm not going to have enough time to actually go over the second piece, which is weakness. There's a whole kind of breakdown, so I'll do that next week, inshallah ta'ala. But this is the reality of the matter. The reality of the issue is that unless we learn to become selfless, unless we teach our children to become selfless, unless we actually show examples of selflessness within our own lives, and teach the importance of behaving that way, of getting over our self-centeredness when it comes to every aspect of being alive. See, I gave an example of political advocacy, which is just one avenue of selflessness. Honestly, it exists in everything. It exists in everything. If you treated people the way you would like to be treated, if you saw them as equal to you, if you truly saw them as equal to you, they're as important as you are. Think about it. If you think about people that way, if you think about the world that way, you behave differently. You refuse to take anything without making sure everyone's going to get an equal amount. But unfortunately, we're not raised that way in the world. The world, consumerism and capitalism, unfortunately, teaches the opposite of that. And if you come from the Middle East and you grew up there, then life itself taught you the opposite of that. that إذا ما طاحشت, if you don't go in first, if you don't kick the guy to your left, step on the guy on your right, and if you don't do that, you'll never get treated properly. We were taught that. We are taught that from a young age. A young boy who comes home and tells his dad, I stood in line and I didn't get anything because I didn't push. The father yells at the son, you're weak because you didn't push and shove and try to get yourself ahead. Now we don't have what you should have been able to bring home. So it's taught at home that no, go, break the rules and be selfish. And who cares about anyone around you? Let it sink as long as you get there first. Let it sink. نحن والطوفان من بعدنا. As long as I get it, then who cares? Let everyone drown. No. That's not what the Quran teaches, at least. I'm not going to argue with you if you think that that's the right way to raise your kids and if you think that's the right way to live life. I'm not going to argue with you because it's a waste of my time and probably even yours. But all I'm going to say to you is that that's not what the Quran teaches. If you are following Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, if you are following this book, that's not what it teaches. It refuses that way of life. It refuses that mentality. It refutes it heavily. It stands clearly against it. No, you have to be someone who has generosity in your soul and selflessness in your behavior. You have to be mu'thir. Or else the world doesn't work. It doesn't. The world doesn't function. Forget about Islam. The world doesn't function. If we behave in ways where if everyone else behaved, the world wouldn't function. You have to think about that. The way you're living your life, if everyone else lived that way, would everything work? Would things function well? Or are you taking more than you're giving? Or are you treating yourself as if you're different than everyone else? Do you have a VIP card somewhere in your mind? No, I don't have to stand in line. I don't have to do that. I don't have to follow that rule. If you're offering yourself exemptions to the rules that everyone else has to follow, then you haven't learned this lesson yet. And that shuh inside your heart is eating away and is going to control you eventually. And it'll turn people, it turns people into monsters. It turns people into absolute monsters. Over the next while, there will be, there's a protest coming up soon, and then there's a dinner at LMM. There's a few things coming up for what's happening in Sudan. And I believe that it's only fair, if you understand what I talked about today, if this was clear to everyone, that as we responded to the people of Gaza at the beginning, with that passion in our hearts, I watched people who almost never came to Masajid, but they went out and they stood in the rain 2 years ago, in the cold, and they held their signs, and they stood there for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the sake of their brothers and sisters who were suffering elsewhere, and they continue to do that for 2 years. That passion that you carry in your heart, you have to generalize for everyone who's suffering. You have to turn that into something that's not specific just to yours, just to the people who have your last name or come from your country or look like you. No, it has to be for everyone. If it's real, it's for everyone. If it's fake, then it's just yours. See, ethics can't be conditional. Ethics can't be just when it serves me, when it's convenient for me. Ethics have to be generalizable. They have to be consistent across the board. Everyone deserves that passion that you have, that selflessness, the care that you have. Everyone does. And we are at fault for not knowing. It happens every once in a while. I give a khutbah, and then a brother or a sister will come up to me. They come from a part of the world that I don't have a lot of experience with. I don't see very often. My congregation doesn't have a lot of people from that background. They talk to me about the suffering of his land and his people, and it puts me at shame every time. I remember it was a few years ago, a brother from a Uyghur, from the Chinese Muslims. He came and he told me stories that till this day I have not been able to get rid of. Like, I would like to forget those stories if I can, just so I sleep better and I don't have, because every once in a while the story jumps into my mind, and now I can't say. Now, khalas, there's no sleeping anymore until tomorrow, because I can't stop thinking about what happened to these people, and the lack of care that the Muslims around them showed, and how we just kind of kept on going as if nothing happened. I'm telling you that if you were in that position, you wouldn't be okay with that. You would want people to actually at least to care, and that's what ithar is. Ithar is treating people the way you would like to be treated if you were in their position. That's what ithar is. It's very simple. How would you like to be treated if you were in that position? And don't tell me I would have never been. No. Don't ever say that. Oh, I wouldn't be in that position. Of course you would be. Of course you would be. You're human, and you're open to mistakes, and you could easily be in that position to say, no, I was smart. I left. No, you're not. None of us are. You can never say that. That's a degree of arrogance, by the way, that is punishable. Never say that. I would never be that. What do you mean you never be that? You know. What do you know? And how do you know that? And where do you bring that confidence? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted you and granted me that which we have today. Be thankful that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted us what we have, but never say I wouldn't be in that position. You could have easily been in that position. It takes no effort from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all to put all of us in difficult positions. But He didn't. And He gave us the opportunity to care about those who are. So care. And that requires overcoming this shuh and this selfishness that exists inside of us. And with that, I hope that was a benefit to you. وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ أَمَرَنَا بِأَمْرٍ عَظِيمٍ فَقَالَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَمَلَائِكَتَهُ يُصَلُّونَ عَلَى النَّبِيِّ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا صَلُّوا عَلَيْهِ وَسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد وارض اللهم عن الأربعة الخلفاء السادة الحنفاء أبي بكر وعمر وعثمان وعلي وارض اللهم عن أزواجه أمهات المؤمنين وعن آله الطيبين الطاهرين وعن صحابته الغر الميامين وعن التابعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وعنا معهم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات اللهم فرج هموم المهمومين ونفس كروب المكروبين وارفع الغم عن المغمومين وارفع الظلم عن المظلومين واحقن دماءنا ودماء المسلمين اللهم احقن دماء إخواننا المستضعفين في كل مكان احقن دماءهم في غزة فلسطين وفي السودان وفي اليمن وفي أفغانستان وفي غيرها من بلاد الأرض ما علمنا منها وما لم نعلم يا أرحم الراحمين رد المسجد الأقصى إلى رحاب المسلمين أخرج الصهاينة منه أذلة صاغرين ردنا أجمعين إليك وإلى دينك ردا جميلا وتب علينا اللهم من جميع ذنوبنا توبة نصوحة طهرنا بها قلبا وجسدا وروحا وما ذلك عليك اللهم بعزيز ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عباد الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر